So this is my thesis on the role of morphological knowledge in spelling. So there's a two systems model of spelling, which holds that there's a phoneme-grapheme system, which facilitates the learning of ruleful relationships between sounds and words. And this works for simple words. So if a word sounds like dig, there's really only one way it could be spelled, um, according to this sound letter sort of correspondence thing. Then there's a word-specific system, which facilitates the learning of spelling of whole words as a gestalt. And this is necessary for words that could support multiple orthographic representations, like zucchini or marijuana. This model has been challenged on the grounds that it fails to take into account the morphophonemic nature of English orthography. So even though s and z are different sounds in English, they're spelt in a consistent way because they're the same morpheme, denoting plurality. This suggests spelling ability may be partially a function of morphological knowledge, on top of the phoneme, grapheme, and word-specific knowledge I mentioned earlier. So maybe there should be a three systems model. Um, for instance, knowing that misspell can be decomposed into the negative prefix miss and the stem spell might prevent people from erroneously writing the word with only one S. So Rissmans et al. Um, did a test where they looked to see if morphological knowledge would correlate with spelling ability, and they also, more specifically, they wanted to see if morphological knowledge would still predict spelling ability once you controlled for phonological ability and vocabulary ability. And these two variables are a bit associated with the other two systems I mentioned before. So what they found was that morphological knowledge did not significantly predict grade 1 spelling ability once you controlled for these other variables, but it did predict grade 6 spelling ability independently after you controlled for those variables. And the gloss they put on this was that grade 1 children encounter more words that you can just spell through the phoneme grapheme system, but with grade 6 children they're encountering a higher proportion of morphologically complex words, but this morphological knowledge might actually come in useful and make them spell better. So what we wanted to do, since there's very little work being done on the relationship between morphological knowledge and spelling in adults, we wanted to see if we could replicate the findings of Rissmans et al. With adults using similar tasks. So we had 66 first year students that had to be monolingual English speakers born in Australia, New Zealand, or the UK. So we had two tasks measuring morphological knowledge. We expected they'd correlate with spelling ability, and not only that, but we expected they'd still correlate with spelling ability once we took out the effects of vocabulary ability. So a measure of spelling ability, we had 50 hard to spell words, at least one segment defying regular phoneme grapheme correspondences. So participants would hear a recording of somebody saying, copying other people's work is plagiarism. Plagiarism. Um, um, and we calculate a percentage error for each individual. If a participant could not, later we tested whether participants could actually read these 50 words. If a participant could not read a particular word, then that item was eliminated for them on the grounds that we shouldn't expect participants to be able to spell words they can't read. If they can't read it, it suggests perhaps they don't actually know this word. Okay, our first morphological knowledge task was the meaning relation task. Here's how it worked. Participants would hear the word buoyancy, then they'd see the word boy on the screen. And they're asked to rank on a scale of 1 to 5 how closely related in meaning these two words are. So with these two words, there's a genuine morphological relationship. So we would expect participants with good morphological knowledge to pick 4 or 5 because there's a real relationship here. It's STEM because the word boy is completely contained within buoyancy. Here's another one where there's a genuine relationship. Again, participants with good knowledge should pick 4 or 5 here. This time it's non-stem because the word symmetry isn't completely contained within asymmetric. And here are the two counterpart conditions where there is no genuine relationship. And for these ones, participants with good morphological knowledge should pick 1 or 2. The words used here, buoyancy, asymmetric, and so on, these were all words which were drawn from the spelling ability task. Our first task I mentioned before. Okay, our other test of morphological knowledge was the sentence completion task. So here's an example. The statement was absurd. We could see its absurdity, and if participants finish the sentence correctly, then they'd be judged correct on this. Here, absurd to absurdity, there's no phonological or orthographic change. My uncle can perform magic. He is a, and participants would say, magician. And here, there's a phonological change, okay? The sound in k is different from in magician. The speech should be brief. It should have brevity. And here, there's the sound changes, and it's written differently too. So we thought this would be the hardest kind, where they both change, and this one here, where neither of them change, should be the easiest. So here's what we actually found. Neither of our morphological knowledge tasks correlated with spelling ability. So that was unexpected. We thought, not only did we think that they'd correlate with spelling ability, but we thought that these two tasks would correlate so strongly with spelling ability that they'd continue to predict spelling ability even after we controlled for vocabulary ability. As it was, only our control task, the vocabulary task, controlled with spelling ability. So we'll just have a quick look at our results. So as you can see here, spelling ability was correlated with vocabulary ability, but sentence completion did not correlate. The performance on the sentence completion task did not correlate with spelling ability, and neither did performance on the meaning rating task. It was practically unrelated. So just having a look at our morphological task, the first morphological knowledge task, the sentence completion task, did not correlate with spelling ability, as I've already said. However, it did correlate with vocab ability and this word reading task I mentioned earlier, which is what you'd expect. So it wasn't as though the sentence completion task was so flawed that it wasn't correlating with anything. It just didn't correlate with the thing we'd expect it to correlate with. The meaning rating task, remember here, we were expecting participants who gave a high rating, who correctly gave a high rating to two words that really were related. We were expecting them to do better on the spelling task. Didn't happen. Correlation's practically zero. This task actually did not correlate with anything, which may perhaps suggest that the task was flawed. Here we broke down our sentence completion task. So remember there were three conditions. The both change was supposed to be the hardest. The no change supposed to be the easiest. There was a very small correlation between spelling ability and performance on the easiest no change condition of the sentence completion task. But it's quite a small correlation. We were expecting, if anything, that the correlation should be higher for the both change condition, because this is a harder task, or so we thought, and hence it should be more discriminating between participants, but actually the correlation here was non-significant. And just having a look here, recall that on the meaning rating task, where they had to rate the closeness of the relationship in meaning, the words being used were the same as the words being used in the spelling ability task. So what we did was we broke down the spelling ability task into subconditions where the same words were being used, as in this morphological stem condition of the meaning rating task, and we saw if there would be any correlations there. Nothing significant. So to conclude, there's no evidence that morphological knowledge correlates with adult spelling ability. We've thought of some possible reasons for this. Maybe there really is only a phoneme grapheme system and a word-specific system. Maybe the morphological knowledge does make a difference, but it only makes a difference to childhood spelling ability, as we saw with those grade 6 kids. Maybe it somehow washes out by adulthood. Or maybe morphological knowledge really does predict spelling ability in adults, but our tests of morphological knowledge were inadequate for one reason or another, and we're still thinking about what was going on there. Okay, thanks.